okay, in your body. So that is trillion का मतलब कितना जीरो आएगा? It is trillion 12 6 9 12, okay. And the basic organization of every cell, almost every cell, is these structures, that is the cell membrane. It is having the cell membrane, the cytoplasm and the nucleus. Almost all the cells is having these structures, okay. And the light microscopic structure will be like this. Then what is the composition of the cell? As a whole, every cell in your body is having most of the water, approximately 70 to 80%, isn't it? And after that, along with the different ions and electrolytes, sodium, potassium, phosphate, sulfate, like that. Then there is the protein. Cell ka as a whole, cell is composed mostly of water, 70 to 80%. Then this is protein, that is 10 to 20% of the cell mass. That is the cell ka jitna mass hota hai uska 10 to 20% constituted by proteins. Then lipids, approximately 2% of the cell mass, and the least one is the carbohydrate, that is approximately 1%. But in case of muscle cell, it is 3%, and in case of liver cell, it is 6%. It is a bit more. Okay. So this is the composition of a cell, okay, as a whole. Then the protein component, we will learn the body fluids in a separate topic actually. So water and electrolytes के बारे में आगे पढ़ेंगे. So just we are seeing the basic concepts. So in the protein, it is 10 to 20% of the cell mass, and those proteins are constituted by structural proteins, and there are functional proteins also. Structural proteins means that is giving the support to the cell. Okay, there are cytoskeletons, in the cell, and there are functional proteins also. That is, कहाँ से आ रहे हो आप? बाहर से आते हो? हाँ? Come. So in the functional protein, there are enzymes, there are different receptors. Those are the functional proteins. Then there are lipids, approximately 2%. The lipids may be phospholipids or cholesterols, or it may be triglyceride, that is neutral fat. Okay, and these triglycerides, जो फैट सेल्स होते हैं, स्पेशली जो फैट सेल्स में मेनली ट्राइग्लिसराइड्स के फॉर्म में होते हैं, 95%. That is the main storehouse of energy in times of need. Okay, that can be utilized later. Then carbohydrates, approximately 1% of the total cell mass, and mainly it provides the nutrition to the cell. Okay, and it is also having some structural component, okay, along with the lipids, proteins. Protein was a structural component. Then the parts of the cell, everyone knows about the different parts. That is the cell membrane, the nucleus, and in the cytoplasm there are different organelles are there, with mitochondria, endoplasmic reticulum, Golgi body, lysosomes, peroxisomes. Okay, then there are cytoskeletons, microtubules, microfilaments. Okay, so you all know these things. So coming on to the cell membrane. Cell membrane, that is approximately 7.5 to 10 nanometer in thickness. And what is it? It is composed of, किससे बना होता है? Phospholipid, lipid, lipoprotein होते हैं ना? By lipid layer, and there are proteins. Okay, so you all know this thing, composed mostly of lipoproteins, lipids and proteins. Then, and coming on to the only the cell membrane. Cell membrane में different constituents क्या होते हैं? Cell membrane. Okay, earlier I was telling about the as a whole the cell. सेल में कितने वाटर हो रहे हैं, प्रोटीन कितने हो रहे हैं, लिपिड्स कितने हैं, कार्बोहाइड्रेट्स कितने, बट only the cell membrane is composed of mostly of protein, approximately 55%. All the cell membrane, they are mostly, it is protein in nature, that is 55%. After that, that is lipids, and that lipid may be phospholipid, cholesterol, and there are other lipids like sphingolipid, glycolipid, there will be other lipids also. Okay, so phospholipids is the predominant among the lipids, approximately constituting 25% of the total cell membrane. Then the cholesterol 13%, then there are different other lipids, approximately 4%. So it all constitutes 42%. Okay, lipid component. Then the carbohydrates, the least one, that is the 3%, approximately 3%. So altogether 100% आ रहा है इसमें. So it is the composition of the cell membrane. Okay. So everywhere this happens actually. Proteins is the 55%, then lipids, and then carbohydrates. But in all the body, in every cell, this applies. But there is a exception to this. कहाँ पे होते हैं? RBC में क्या? There is a exception to the cell, that there is the myelin sheath of the nerve cell membrane. You know, it is composed mostly of lipids. It is the only exception where you will not find more number of proteins. Okay, that is the lipid outnumber the proteins here, and which is the membrane in the body where the protein composition is the maximum. It is the inner mitochondrial membrane. वहाँ पे प्रोटीन 55% से भी ज़्यादा आएगा, 80% है प्रॉब्लम. Inner mitochondrial membrane. It is also a membrane. You know, mitochondria is having the outer and inner mitochondrial membrane. Okay, these are also composed of lipoprotein. Okay. So coming on to the model, that is a fluid mosaic model. That is the widely accepted model. That is also called, क्या कहते हैं, Singer and Nicolson model, है ना? Because they discovered it way back in 1972. And which is the, it is having the lipid layer, that is the fluid component, है ना? A fluid component होता है इसमें, and there is mosaic component. Which forms the mosaic component? Protein. That is the fluid component is formed by the lipid bilayer. No, lipid is having two layers. एक बाहर में होता है, एक अंदर में होता है ना? Isn't it? So fluid component is formed by the lipid bilayer, and mosaic component is formed by the large globular protein. You can see these are the fluid component, lipid, green, and this one, yellow. These are the globular proteins interspersed in it. Okay, so this is the fluid mosaic model, and the cell membrane, you can see in the structure of the fluid mosaic model, you can see this is the lipid bilayer. One layer, outer lipid sheath layer, then the inner lipid layer. Okay, ये outer दो layer में bilayer होता है lipid का, and it is having head region and tail region. You know what is the head region formed by? Huh? Yes, that is the hydrophilic or hydrophobic? Hydrophilic, है ना? Outside and inside, both side is hydrophilic. दोनों side aqueous environment है ना? ECF है, extracellular fluid and intracellular fluid. Both are the aqueous environment. So it is hydrophilic, and that is formed by the head. Head is formed by the phosphate of the phospholipid. Phospholipid में जो क्या होता है, phosphate end होता है, that forms the head region. That is the hydrophilic region. You can see this is the head region, this is the tail region. This is the head region, this is the tail region. Tail region is merging each other. Okay, and this tail region is formed by the hydrophobic fatty acids. Okay, those are formed by the fatty acids. You can see hydrophilic phosphate head, and there is hydrophobic fatty acid tail. Hydrophilic phosphate head and hydrophobic fatty acid tail. Okay, so these fatty acid tails, they are lipid soluble, है ना? Suppose you put a drop of oil in a bucket, water है, fill है उसमें, तो put a drop, है ना? एक drop डाला आपने एक oil का, तो दूसरा drop डाला तो क्या होगा? They will merge each other instantly, like that. These lipid bilayer, the fatty acid, they are merging each other. Okay, and this cell membrane provides a barrier to the water and water soluble component, not to the lipid soluble. Lipid soluble क्या होगा? वो dissolve करके वो अंदर चले जाते हैं, like this. These are the lipid soluble components. Everyone knows that जो lipid soluble component तो easily cross कर जाते हैं, है ना? Like different gases, these are the lipid soluble. Nitrogen, oxygen, carbon dioxide, there are halogen also. Okay, so these are the lipid soluble, they can cross it easily. But the different larger molecules and the charged molecules, water and water soluble components, they cannot go inside easily. Okay, like you can see here, it is not crossing this membrane, it is coming outside. Okay, glucose ions. So what we have to do to cross these ions or higher molecular weight molecules, उसके लिए क्या होता है फिर? There are channels, and those channels are provided by proteins. Okay, so the basic lipid bilayer is composed of, जो lipid का bilayer है, it is composed of three main types of lipids. उसमें जो lipids होते हैं, majority तो phospholipids होते हैं, है ना? Majority phospholipids होते हैं, but there are other lipids also. There may be other types of lipids like sphingolipid, glycolipid, cholesterol भी होते हैं उसमें cell membrane में. कहाँ पे होता है cholesterol cell membrane? Yes, you are telling something. Stand up and tell. Who was telling? Yes, you. Tell me where the cholesterol is situated. Outer side? Yes. Yes. Inner side कहाँ पे? Where? The fatty acid जो tail है, fatty acid tail के पास में होते हैं, अंदर साइड में, अंदर भी यहाँ पे होते हैं, है ना? जो hydrophobic region है, वहाँ पे होते हैं. Okay. So the cholesterol, it may be cholesterol also. You can see here. This is the head region, and this is the fatty acid. Okay, these fatty acids may be saturated fatty acid or unsaturated fatty acid. होता है ना? And saturated है fatty acid या unsaturated है, इस पे क्या, इस पे डिपेंड करते हैं. It causes the fluidity of the membrane. Saturated होगा तो क्या होगा? Fluidity कम होगा या ज़्यादा होगा? It will be less. Saturated fats कम करते हैं ना. Unsaturated fatty acid जो होते हैं वो fluidity को बढ़ाते हैं. Okay. So phospholipids, they are the most abundant lipid as we have discussed. One end is hydrophilic and other is hydrophobic. We have discussed these things. Hydrophilic is the phosphate portion, that is the polar head. Hydrophobic is the fatty acid, non-polar tail. Then phospholipid present in the cell membrane. There are different types of phospholipids which are present in the cell membrane, and that causes the asymmetry of the cell membrane. Cell membrane में जो lipid bilayer है, they are not identical. Okay, why they are not identical? Because their composition is somewhat else. Outside में phospholipid different type के होते हैं, अंदर में कुछ different होते हैं. That's why they are asymmetrical. They are not identical. So that's why the outside, जो outer leaflets पे जो है present है, this is the phospholipid which are present to the outer leaflet. of the cell membrane. जो लिपिड बाइलेयर का आउटर लिफलेट है, आउटर मेम्ब्रेन है, उसमें ये वाले फॉस्फोलिपिड्स होते हैं, दैट इज फॉस्फेटिडाइल कोलिन एंड स्फिंगोमाइलिन. ओके, इसमें जो फॉस्फोलिपिड्स के जो टाइप है वो कौन से हैं? फॉस्फेटिडाइल कोलिन, दैट इज आल्सो कॉल्ड लेसिथिन, एंड स्फिंगोमाइलिन, दैट इज प्रेजेंट इन द आउटर मेम्ब्रेन लिफलेट. बाइलेयर है ना, बाहर में जो है उसमें ये है. इनसाइड में क्या है? देयर आर डिफरेंट टाइप्स ऑफ फॉस्फोलिपिड, दैट इज द फॉस्फेटिडाइल इथोनालामीन. फॉस्फेटिडाइल इथोनालामीन, जिसको हम सिफेलिन भी कहते हैं, फॉस्फेटिडाइल सेरिन, फॉस्फेटिडाइल सेरिन, एंड देयर आर अदर मोर फॉस्फोप्रोटीन फॉस्फोलिपिड्स, दैट इज फॉस्फेटिडाइल आइनोसिटॉल, है ना, phosphatidyl inositol. Then there is phosphatidyl glycerol, that is cardiolipin vehicle. So these are the phospholipids because they are present in the outer membrane lipid, that is different than the inner membrane lipid. That's why both the lipid bilayer, they are asymmetrical. Okay, so that causes the membrane asymmetry. Then there are still other lipids. Other lipids में था ना sphingolipids. Sphingolipids क्या होते हैं? They are present in small amounts, especially in nerve cells. है ना, nerve cells में ज़्यादा होते हैं, sphingolipids होते हैं वहाँ. And they are also having their own hydrophobic and hydrophilic tails. Then the another component, that is the cholesterol. है ना, एक तो majority में phospholipids थे. Then there were और क्या थे? फॉस्फोलिपिड्स. देयर अदर लिपिड्स और कौन से थे? स्फिंगोलिपिड्स. देन देयर आर कोलेस्ट्रॉल, है ना. कोलेस्ट्रॉल्स में दीज आर इनकॉर्पोरेटेड इनटू द हाइड्रोफोबिक रीजन, है ना. नीचे वाले जो फैटी एसिड जो टेल थे, है ना, दैट इज द हाइड्रोफोबिक रीजन, वहां पे होते हैं इनकॉर्पोरेटेड इन द हाइड्रोफोबिक रीजन ऑफ द सेल मेम्ब्रेन एक्चुअली, एंड दे डिटरमाइन द डिग्री ऑफ परमिएबिलिटी, फ्लेक्सिबिलिटी एंड स्टेबिलिटी ऑफ द मेम्ब्रेन. इस पे डिपेंड करता है कि आपका फ्लूइड मेम्ब्रेन कितना फ्लेक्सिबल है, स्टेबिलिटी उसका डिपेंड करता है. ओके, एंड दिस कोलेस्ट्रॉल्स आर कॉल्ड द फ्लूइड बफर भी कहते हैं. अगर कम होता है तो इसको बराबर कर लेते हैं, ज्यादा होता है तो इसको कम कर लेते हैं. दीज आर लाइक दैट. दीज आर कॉल्ड द फ्लूइड बफर, फ्लूइडिटी बफर. Okay, controls most of the membrane fluidity, so it is called the fluidity buffer. This is important point, fluidity buffer. These are the cholesterols you can see here. These are the cholesterols. Okay, in the hydrophobic tail region. So membrane fluidity, this is the unique characteristic of the membrane, and these remain in the state of fluid to have the optimal functioning of the cell. This is necessary actually, and it is maintained because of the right ratio of the saturated and unsaturated fatty acids. Saturated or fatty acid और unsaturated fatty acids का ratio कितना है? It depends कि कितना fluid होगा membrane. Okay, and depends on three important factors. That is the type of fatty acids, obviously, then the amount of degree of saturation, है ना, अगर fatty acid है तो कितने amount में, then the temperature also. You can see here, these are the fatty acids. इस तरह से अरेंज होते हैं. Saturated fatty acid straight होते हैं, और जो unsaturated fatty acid होते हैं वो किंग्ड होते हैं. किंग्ड होगा तो वो ज्यादा फ्लूइड बनाएगा, है ना, it can dance, है ना, in the fluid, but ये compact बनाता है. Saturated fatty acid straight इस तरह से compact बना देते हैं. Okay, so it decreases the fluidity, saturated fatty acid. And if you increase the temperature, what will happen to the fluidity? It will increase, है ना, ये increase होगा. So it depends on the temperature also. So what are the causes of fluidity of the membrane? We should understand. Then the proteins, coming on to the proteins. Next point is the protein. That is the मैक्सिमम कॉन्स्टिट्यूएंट सेल मेम्ब्रेन में कितना था? 55% approximately constituted by the protein, so it is having the maximum amount, and proteins forms the mosaic part of the fluid mosaic model, and these are mainly इसमें ग्लाइकोप्रोटीन्स होते हैं, है ना. ग्लाइकोप्रोटीन्स करने का मतलब जो प्रोटीन्स होते हैं स्टडेड है, दे आर कंबाइंड विथ कार्बोहाइड्रेट्स आउटसाइड, है ना. कार्बोहाइड्रेट कंपोनेंट आगे देखेंगे. मेनली ग्लाइकोप्रोटीन इन नेचर. दे आर अरेंज इन टू टाइप्स. सेल मेम्ब्रेन प्रोटीन, दो तरह के प्रोटीन्स मिलते हैं. कौन कौन से होते हैं? स्ट्रक्चरल एंड फंक्शनल तो ठीक है. देयर आर डिपेंडिंग अपॉन द इंटीग्रल और ट्रांस मेम्ब्रेन प्रोटीन. एक मेम्ब्रेन प्रोटीन होते हैं जो थ्रू एंड थ्रू द मेम्ब्रेन इट क्रॉसेस आउटसाइड टू इनसाइड. ओके. And there are other proteins which are peripherally arranged, be it outside or inside. Outside or inside भी हो सकते, है ना. So they may be arranged in two types: integral protein, which are called the transmembrane protein. Then there are peripheral proteins, that is intrinsic. That may be intrinsic situated or extrinsic protein. आउटसाइड भी हो सकते हैं एंड इनसाइड भी हो सकते हैं. यू कैन सी द स्ट्रक्चर. दीज आर द प्रोटीन्स. ये कौन से प्रोटीन है? इंटीग्रल है ना, क्रॉस कर रहे हैं पूरा. एंड दीज आर द पेरिफेरल प्रोटीन्स. यू कैन सी हियर. यूजुअली द पेरिफेरल प्रोटीन्स आर ज्वाइंड. दीज आर जस्ट अटैच्ड विद द इंटीग्रल प्रोटीन यूजुअली. ओके. You can see the structure different. These are the carbohydrate portions. You can see here. These are attached. These may be attached with the protein itself. ये protein से भी attached हो सकते हैं carbohydrate portion, or it may be joined with the lipids also, depending upon it is called glycoprotein or glycolipids. ठीक है. And these are the cytoskeleton filaments. Integral protein, that is called the transmembrane protein. This is amphipathic. Amphipathic का मतलब this is having the hydrophobic and hydrophilic region also. इसमें भी होते हैं. Amphipathic उसको कहते हैं. And function क्या होंगे mainly? It functions as a receptors. In due course of time you learn there are receptors over the cell, in the cell membrane. These proteins are called the G protein. These are very important proteins. G protein coupled receptors, GPCR. है ना. क्या होते हैं? अगर कोई रिसेप्टर अगर बाइंड करा, है ना, there are changes in these receptors. Okay. कोई अगर हार्मोन और एंजाइम अगर बाइंड करा, किससे बाइंड करेगा? रिसेप्टर से. And these G protein receptors, there will be conformational change, and अंदर में क्या होगा? लाइक बाहर से अगर आप स्विच ऑन करते हो, बेल बजाते हो, तो अंदर में क्या होता है? रिएक्शन होता है. तो लाइक दैट, तो इट में हैपन. तो आगे आप पढ़ोगे इसको. जी प्रोटीन कपल्ड रिसेप्टर्स. देयर आर रिसेप्टर्स विच आर स्पैनिंग थ्रू द सेल मेम्ब्रेन 7 times. इसको हम कहते हैं 7 पास रिसेप्टर भी कहते हैं. दिस इज ऑल्सो कॉल्ड सर्पेंटाइन रिसेप्टर बिकॉज 7 times से क्रॉस. 7 पास रिसेप्टर्स, जी प्रोटीन कपल्ड रिसेप्टर्स, है ना, जो जी प्रोटीन से मेडिएटेड होते हैं. सो दिस जी प्रोटीन कपल रिसेप्टर्स क्या है? दीज आर ऑल्सो प्रोटीन्स. दीज आर इंटीग्रल प्रोटीन्स. ओके. चूंकि थ्रू एंड थ्रू क्रॉस कर. देन इट में ऑल्सो एक्ट एज ट्रांसपोर्टर्स. इट में एक्ट एज ए चैनल प्रोटीन, कैरियर प्रोटीन. ओके. चैनल प्रोटीन भी हो सकता है, कैरियर प्रोटीन भी हो सकता है. इट में ऑल्सो एक्ट एज आयन चैनल्स, है ना. चैनल प्रोटीन लाइक वाटर चैनल्स के लिए होता है ना. वाटर जो सॉल्युबल सब्सटेंसेस होते हैं, है ना, उसके लिए भी होते हैं. दैट इज द चैनल प्रोटीन्स. देन इट में एक्ट एज कैरियर प्रोटीन लाइक ग्लूकोज का जो ट्रांसपोर्ट होता है, ग्लूकोज ट्रांसपोर्टर्स, ग्लूट, GLUT, ग्लूकोज ट्रांसपोर्टर्स होते हैं. दोज आर कैरियर प्रोटीन. दोज काउजेस फैसिलिटेटेड डिफ्यूजन, है ना. It is a type of diffusion, but it is facilitated by these carrier proteins, glucose transporter protein. Okay, आगे आप पढ़ोगे ट्रांसपोर्ट्स में फैसिलिटेटेड डिफ्यूजन बताएंगे. Okay, so it may be act as channel protein, carrier protein, or it may also act as ion pumps. Like you must have heard about active transport, जहाँ पे क्या होता है, against the gradient something is transported. Okay, so these act as ion pumps. Example क्या है? Sodium potassium pump. What it does? Sodium potassium pump क्या करता है? किस आयन को बाहर करता है, किस आयन को अंदर करता है? यस यस, लेट हिम टेल. जिससे पूछ रहा है लेट हिम टेल. यस यस, सोडियम पोटेशियम एटीपीएस फॉर्म भी कहते हैं क्योंकि एटीपी यूज होता है. व्हाट इट डज? ऑब्वियसली सोडियम पोटेशियम को एक्सचेंज करेगा, बट इन हाउ मच रेशियो? किसको 2 करते हैं? 3 सोडियम आउटसाइड, 2 पोटेशियम इनसाइड. इट एक्युमुलेट्स पोटेशियम इनसाइड, है ना? तो आयन फॉर्म्स आगे पढ़ोगे, ये सब पढ़ाएंगे उसको भी. देन इट में ऑल्सो एक्ट एज, these integral proteins may also act as antigens. It is having an antigenic function. You must be knowing that RBC membrane जो होते हैं वहां पे क्या होते हैं? एंटीजन होते हैं, ब्लड ग्रुप के एंटीजन होते हैं, है ना? सो दिस ग्लाइकोप्रोटीन, दोज आर द ग्लाइकोप्रोटीन. दे एक्ट एज एंटीजन्स ऑन द सरफेस ऑफ द सरफेस, लाइक आरबीसी सरफेस, ना? वो एंटीजन होते हैं. और ब्लड ग्रुप का टेस्ट करोगे उसमें आपको पता है, ऑफ द सेल, ब्लड ग्रुप एंटीजन्स इन द आरबीसी मेम्ब्रेन. So these are the integral proteins. Then there are peripheral proteins. These are often attached to the integral proteins. It may be intrinsic or extrinsic. Intrinsic proteins, ये क्या करेगा? These will provide mostly the structural support. These peripheral proteins, especially the intrinsic proteins, they provide the structural support to the cell. Like it anchors, it serves as enzymes or anchor the cytoskeleton proteins that maintain the cell shape. जो आरबीसी का मेम्ब्रेन है, यू नो, कैसे किस तरह का होता है? बाइकॉनकेव होता है ना? So how it is maintained? It is maintained by these peripheral proteins, especially the spectrin and ankyrin. नाम सुने? You must have heard. So intrinsic protein, they serve as the enzymes or they anchor the cytoskeleton proteins. जो साइटोस्केलेटन, जो अंदर का जो स्ट्रक्चरल प्रोटीन्स होते हैं, है ना, उसको एंकर करते हैं, एंड दैट मेंटेन द सेल शेप. लाइक इंट्रिंसिक प्रोटीन में भी स्पेक्ट्रिन और एंकाइरिन. देन देयर एक्सट्रिंसिक प्रोटीन. एक्सट्रिंसिक प्रोटीन क्या करेगा? इट एक्ट्स एज अ सीएम. सीएम क्या हुआ? सेल एडहेजन मॉलिक्यूल. सेल एडहेजन मॉलिक्यूल. कैम फॉर एंकरिंग द सेल. सेल क्या होता है? बेसमेंट मेम्ब्रेन पे एंकर होता है. It is having the basement membrane. So for that anchoring, the cell adhesion molecule function works, and also with the neighboring cell it is joined. Okay, so for that purpose this extrinsic protein works. And as you discussed, the shape of the membrane is biconcave shape, and biconcave shape maintain कौन करते हैं? These are the proteins, that is the alpha spectrin, beta spectrin, then ankyrin, then band 3 protein. Okay, these are the peripheral proteins. These are also the peripheral proteins. This is actually maintaining the shape of the RBCs. If there is mutation in these proteins, what will happen? Shape will change, है ना? And the shape may change to, it may become spherical, है ना? It may become ellipsoid. हेरिडिटरी एस्फेरोसाइटोसिस कहते हैं, आगे पढ़ोगे ब्लड में हेरिडिटरी एस्फेरोसाइटोसिस हो जाता है, हेरिडिटरी एलेप्टोसाइटोसिस हो जाता है. तो अगर शेप मेंटेन नहीं रहेगा तो क्या होगा? देयर विल बी हिमोलिसिस. आरबीसीज क्या होगा? ब्रेकडाउन होने लगेंगे. वो पास करते हैं तो डिफरेंट एरिया से पास करते हैं, वो जाकर इंटैंगल हो जाएंगे, वहां क्या होंगे? हिमोलिसिस होने लगेंगे. दैट कॉजेज हिमोलिटिक एनीमिया. ओके, सो म्यूटेशन इन दिस प्रोटीन लीड्स टू चेंज इन द शेप, may be spherical or may be ellipsoid, and that may cause hemolytic anemia. Okay. Then there are still another peripheral protein. This is dystrophin glycoprotein complex. Dystrophin glycoprotein complex क्या है? It provides a strength to the muscle. Okay. अगर इसमें म्यूटेशन हो जाता है या कम है, okay, what will happen? The muscle will be weak and it leads to two important diseases called क्या? कौन बोल रहे? Yes, बोलो बोलो. Who is telling? Please answer. Yes, muscular. Which type of muscular dystrophy? There may be type of. Yeah, you correct. Muscular dystrophy may be there. Type of muscular dystrophy, it may be Duchenne muscular dystrophy or Becker's muscular dystrophy. दो तरह का होता है, DMD and BMD. So DMD, that is Duchenne muscular dystrophy. इसमें क्या होता है? Complete absence of this protein, this peripheral protein is absent from the muscle. That is dystrophin glycoprotein complex protein will be absent. So there will be severe muscular dystrophy, muscular weakness. Then there will be Becker's muscular dystrophy. इसमें क्या होता है? ऑल्टर्ड हो जाते हैं, ये म्यूटेटेड हो जाता है, ये रिड्यूस्ड हो जाता है अमाउंट. ठीक है. दिस वाज रिलेटेड टू सम क्लिनिकल एस्पेक्ट्स. देन कमिंग ऑन टू द मेम्ब्रेन, कार्बोहाइड्रेट्स. प्रोटीन हो गया, कार्बोहाइड्रेट्स है. These carbohydrates actually these are loose covering throughout the cell membrane. Cell membrane के बाहर होता है, भी दिखा है ना, प्रोटीन से अटैच होते हैं या लिपिड से अटैच होते हैं. दिस फॉर्म ए लेयर, और उसको लेयर को क्या कहते हैं? ग्लाइकोकैलिक्स. प्लीज स्विच ऑफ योर मोबाइल फोन. किसी के मोबाइल फोन रिंग हो रहा है. So I have told you earlier in the first class, your mobile should be switched off, kept in your bag. So it form a thin loose covering throughout the cell membrane, which is called क्या कहते हैं? Glycocalyx. And that may be linked with क्या, किससे लिंक हो सकता है? प्रोटीन से हो सकता है या लिपिड से हो सकता है. Usually it is linked with proteins, majority, that is glycoprotein, and it may be glycolipids also, approximately 10%. It may be linked with lipids also. The usually the glyco portion, that is the carbohydrate portion, it is dangling outwards, बाहर की तरफ रहता है ना, and mostly it is oligosaccharides, and it may be polysaccharides also. Chains of polysaccharide भी attach हो सकते हैं protein से, that is called proteoglycan. Okay. Then what is the significance? Mostly this glycocalyx layer provides a negative environment to the cell membrane. Negative charge देता है उसको, so it repels the charged particles. It helps in fixation also with one another. Okay, एक दूसरे से fix करने में help करता है. It may also act as a receptor also. Apart from protein, these carbohydrate moieties, that may also act as a receptor along with protein, क्योंकि protein से attach होता है ना. Like in insulin, इंसुलिन का जब फंक्शन में पढ़ोगे तो वहां पे क्या होता है? these some carbohydrates are attached, okay, along with the protein molecule. So this may also act as a receptor for winding the hormones like insulin, है ना. इंसुलिन का आप जब मैकेनिज्म एक्शन देखोगे आगे तो वहां पे आपको पता चलेगा. देयर आर proteins which are joined with carbohydrate and it act as a receptor for the insulin. जैसे बाइंड करते हैं अंदर में ऑटोफॉस्फोरिलेशन होता है. ओके, you will learn later. It may also act in immune reactions like glycoprotein जो थे वो क्या थे? सेल मेम्ब्रेन एंटीजन आरबीसी के सरफेस पे क्या था? वो एंटीजन की तरह काम कर रहा था नहीं. So it may also have some immune reactions also. These are the carbohydrates we have earlier seen also, which are attached, may attach with the lipids also. So what is the function of cell membrane? Protective, digestive. As a whole, in short, you can tell the cell membrane is protective, digestive. It may बाहर से फूड स्टफ जो होते हैं वो अंदर आना होता है तो किसके थ्रू आएगा? It has to cross the cell membrane. You know there are endocytosis and exocytosis, isn't it? So it takes in food, excrete out waste products. It also provides the framework for arrangement of protein molecules. It links the adjacent cells together. There are junctional complexes. दो सेल एक दूसरे जुड़ते हैं तो there are complexes, intercellular connections are there. Okay, So in that also the cell membrane helps. It is acting as a selective permeability barrier, and there are polar and non-polar. These are the different organelles. We will learn each one by one. And the mitochondria, these are spherical or oval cylindrical bodies. There are also two lipid bilayer. एक outer mitochondrial membrane है और inner mitochondrial membrane. दोनों का अलग bilipid layer है ना? And there are protein complexes also. And the inner mitochondrial membrane जो है, it is folded, everyone knows that it is folded into crista, shelf-like structure, and this shelf-like structure, crista, is having the oxidative enzyme for oxidative phosphorylation. There are ATP generation here, है ना? Electron transport chains होते हैं, है ना? Oxidative phosphorylation. Then the inner mitochondrial membrane is having the fluid filled cavity. अंदर में inner mitochondrial membrane में matrix होगा, है ना? Fluid structure होगा, having a large quantities of, there are different enzymes required for the energy production, है ना? Electron transport chain में बहुत सारे enzymes लगते हैं, है ना? तो वहाँ पे ये अंदर में रहते हैं inner mitochondrial matrix, and it is involved in ATP generation by oxidative phosphorylation. It is important, few important facts on mitochondria. It is maternal in origin. Inheritance इसका maternal होता है, mother से आता. So your power generating organelle is coming from your mother. Okay, so derived from ovum, their inheritance is maternal in origin, and only cell organelle which is having its own genome apart from nucleus. Nucleus में तो होता है genetic material, इसमें भी अपना genetic material. So the number of human diseases are due to mutations. अगर mitochondrial जो DNA है उसमें अगर mutation हो जाते हैं तो there are a number of diseases which will be associated. अगर mutated हो जाए, change हो जाएगा normal course से, then it may lead to different mitochondrial diseases. Okay, like example है retinitis pigmentosa, है ना? बच्चों में होता है, vision defect होता है, tunnel vision हो जाता है इसमें. Then there is MELAS. MELAS क्या है? It is mitochondrial encephalomyopathy. इसका full form है mitochondrial. This is having different diseases. MELAS. This is mitochondrial mutation का, अगर DNA का mutation होता है तो defect, ये diseases होते हैं. That is mitochondrial encephalomyopathy. This is one. Then lactic acidosis, LA. Then S is stroke-like symptoms. Stroke-like symptoms. These all constitute MELAS. Okay, these may be due to the mutation in the mitochondrial DNA. There are other diseases also. Hearing defect भी होते हैं, वो आगे आप पढ़ोगे medicine में. Then endoplasmic reticulum, it is a network of membranous tubules and vesicles interconnected with each other. Please attendance, तीनों तरफ आप लोग start कर दें. Please take a paper and write down your name and sign it. This side अलग, इधर अलग एक paper, इधर के लिए अलग, so that it can be done along with the class. So network of tubules and vesicles which are connected with each other, endoplasmic reticulum, and like the mitochondria, it is also having the space within the tubule which is having the endoplasmic matrix. अंदर matrix होगा, अंदर में fluid filled area है. And this is the important, this is the synthetic, this is called the synthetic machinery of cell. यहाँ पे क्या होता है? There are rough endoplasmic reticulum and there are smooth endoplasmic reticulum, है ना? And this is also called, rough वाले को क्या कहते हैं? Granular भी कहते हैं, because it is having the ribosome studded onto it, है ना? That's why it is called granular. और उसमें ribosomes नहीं होते हैं, they are smooth over it, so these are called agranular. So these endoplasmic reticulum, these are called the synthetic machinery of cell, because whatever the protein which is generated, यहाँ पे generate हो रहा है, अंदर में process भी होता है, matrix में. Then RAF endoplasmic reticulum, that is the granular one, it is involved in protein synthesis, you know. These are all interconnected, you can see. These are tubule-like structure, they are connected with each other. है ना? Endoplasmic reticulum है. This is the endoplasmic, this is connected with the outer nuclear membrane. नहीं, nuclear membrane से भी connected होते. These are connected with smooth endoplasmic reticulum. Then they are giving their in the form of birds. They give their substances to the Golgi apparatus. So granular one, it is involved in protein synthesis. Newly synthesized proteins, whatever the proteins they are synthesizing, they are extruded into the endoplasmic reticulum matrix. बंद करके क्या होता है, मैट्रिक्स में चला जाता है अंदर, and there they are processed. And processing में क्या हुआ, it may be cleaved, cleaving हो सकता है, it may be glycosylated, it may be folded depending upon the need, it may be folded or glycosylated. है ना, जो प्रोटीन बन रहे हैं अंदर में प्रोसेसिंग के लिए जाते हैं मैट्रिक्स में, एंड वहां पे प्रोसेसिंग के में किस तरह का हो सकता है प्रोसेसिंग, इट में भी क्रॉस लिंकिंग हो सकता है, क्लीविंग हो सकता है ना, फोल्डिंग हो सकता है, ग्लाइकोसाइलेशन हो सकता है, एंड देन ओनली द फाइनल आउटपुट विल कम आउट, प्रोसेस्ड प्रोटीन विल बी कम आउट, है ना. दैट इज सो इन दैट वे इट इज एक्टिंग एज ए क्वालिटी कंट्रोल. ये क्वालिटी कंट्रोल का काम कर रहा है, किस तरह का प्रोटीन बनना है, प्रॉपरली बन रहा है नहीं बन रहा. ठीक है, तो ये तो नॉर्मली फोल्डेड होता है. अगर इसमें अगर कहीं डिफेक्ट हो जाता है प्रोसेसिंग में, तो दैट में कॉज डिजीजेस, है ना, मिसफोल्डेड प्रोटीन अगर हो जाते. तो आगे पढ़ते वो, यू कैन सी हियर, these are the granular endoplasmic reticulum, smooth endoplasmic reticulum, and you know the Nizil's granule, everyone knows about it. This is the क्या ये, what is Nizil's granule? Stand up and tell. Neurons में होते हैं. These are also modified RAF endoplasmic reticulum in the neurons, है ना, Nizil's granules होते हैं. Then the smooth one, it is a smooth part of intracellular transport system, है ना, ये transport intracellular transport system का part है along with Golgi apparatus. It is important, it is involved in lipid synthesis, phospholipids, cholesterols, isn't it? Then steroid hormone synthesis करते हैं, ये important है. Steroid hormone कहाँ से बनते हैं? From, they are all coming from the cholesterol, lipid से ही आते हैं, है ना. Steroid hormones like mineralocorticoid, glucocorticoid, you know, aldosterone, cortisol, these are sex steroids, especially working in adrenal cortex area, testes and ovary. They're all having the steroid hormone. Then it also does the detoxification of drugs, especially having the, इसमें क्या होता है, cytochrome P450 enzymes, है ना, इसमें होते हैं endoplasmic smooth वाले में. So it causes the detoxification of drugs in the liver with the help of these enzymes. Then this smooth endoplasmic reticulum, it is specialized in the muscles. Muscles में जो होते हैं smooth endoplasmic reticulum, उसको हम क्या कहते हैं, sarcoplasmic reticulum. Must be knowing. What is the role of sarcoplasmic reticulum? It is having the calcium within it, and as the need arises, it releases the calcium, है ना, and that helps in the excitation contraction mechanism. Then Golgi apparatus, 4 to 6 stacked layers of flat vesicular structures like serving plates जैसे होते हैं, you can see here, है ना, इस तरह से stacked होते हैं plates के form में, and anatomically and functionally it is closely associated with endoplasmic reticulum. You know, अंदर से synthesize होके जा रहा है, वहाँ पे फिर आपको Golgi apparatus में क्या होता है, the addresses are written, sorting होता है, sorting of protein, है ना, where this protein has to go, it is determined by this Golgi apparatus. So this Golgi apparatus is having structure, it is a polarized structure. इसमें एक cis और trans side होते हैं. cis and trans. Cis is the receiving side and trans is the releasing side, है ना. जो प्रोटीन्स बन के आ रहे हैं उधर से वो रिसीव करेगा और उसको एड्रेस के हिसाब से उसको भेजेगा. So cis and cis is the receiving end. After processing, it also does some further processing, है ना, fine tuning करता है. After processing the substances, they are released from the trans end. Trans end से release करेगा by exocytosis. Prominent in the, obviously it will be prominent in those cells which are involved in secretion, like goblet cells, है ना, mucus secrete करते हैं, isn't it? Then coming on to the endoplasmic reticulum vesicles, जो vesicles जो होते हैं endoplasmic reticulum के, है ना, they are having the substances continuously pinching off from the endoplasmic reticulum. You can see here, these are pinching off in the form of vesicles, endoplasmic reticulum vesicles, and they are received by the cis end of the Golgi apparatus. The transported substances, they are further processed in the Golgi apparatus and they form the different vesicles like lysosomes वगैरह जो बनते हैं. आपको यहाँ से जो टूट के पड़ रहे हैं, है ना, यहाँ से जो टूट के बन रहे हैं, it may form different vesicles, be it lysosomes, different secretory vesicles, and there are other cytoplasmic components. The main functions is sorting or packaging of proteins, है ना, it writes down the addresses. Then also it does post translational processing, है ना, especially ये processing किस तरह का है, post translational processing, protein बनने के बाद, है ना. Enzyme in the Golgi apparatus add the proteoglycans बनने में भी help करते हैं, है ना. So there are different functions. Then the lysosomes, you know, vesicular, these are the vesicular origin organelle which is pinching off from the endoplasmic reticulum. These are budding from the Golgi apparatus. These are the cells. Digestive organelle, everyone knows. Then it contains different hydrolytic enzymes, that is acid hydrolases, है ना. Then there are different enzymes like phosphatases, nucleases. Then there are proteases, different digestive enzymes it is having. Then there are lipid degrading enzymes. Then there are lysozymes which digest the bacteria. You can see in this diagram. These are the lysosomes. These are the ingesting. बाहर से अगर कोई substance आया उसको क्या किया, pinocytosis और phagocytosis. These are digested and these form the residual bodies and excreted. इसको हम प्राइमरी लाइसोसोम्स कहते हैं. जब ये बाहर के जो पार्टिकल्स आए उसको फाइगोसाइटोसिस करते हैं, उसके बाद जो होता है फाइगोलाइसोसोम, दिस इज कॉल्ड सेकेंडरी लाइसोसोम. ओके, एंड देन इट इज रिलीज्ड एज रेजिडुअल बॉडीज. These are also called suicidal bag. Why it is called? Because it is having acid within itself. In the process of destroying the cells, it also gets destroyed. It is martyred. Okay, so lysosomes are also destroyed with them. And there are, if there is some enzymatic enzyme में अगर क्या हो deficiency है, deficient है, there may be different lysosomal storage disorders. ये क्वेश्चन आते हैं बायोकेमिस्ट्री में पढ़ोगे. There are different lysosomal storage disorders. अगर कोई enzyme है जो डिग्रेड करना था कोई सब्सटेंस को, वो अगर एब्सेंट हो जाए तो क्या होगा? That substance will get accumulated within the lysosomes, and those are called lysosomal storage disorders. Okay, if any of the enzyme are deficient, accumulate हो जाएगा. Like there are different diseases like Gaucher's disease, Niemann-Pick's disease, Tay-Sachs disease. इसमें क्या होता है यूजुअली? Gaucher's disease, Niemann-Pick's disease में लीवर स्प्लीन दोनों इलाज हो जाते हैं, like this, है ना. There are mental retardation also. Then there are peroxisomes which are called microbodies. Similar physiological to lysosomes, it is two difference from the lysosomes. They are self-replicated and they contain important enzymes, that is oxidases and catalase. ये important है इसका clarity. Oxidase and catalase enzyme is there in peroxisome, है ना. Oxidize the substances like alcohol, that may be otherwise poisonous. Formaldehyde, named so because they are the site of synthesis and degradation of, क्यों कहते हैं इस peroxisome? Because हाइड्रोजन पेरोक्साइड को सिंथेसाइज भी कर रहा है और डिग्रेड भी कर रहा है. इट इज हाईली रिएक्टिव. सो इट इज प्रेजेंस ऑफ कैटलिस्ट which are important for degradation of H2O2, hydrogen peroxide. It also does the oxidation of very long chain fatty acids. The nucleus which forms the blueprint for all the individual characters, which is having the blueprint. Nuclear membrane होता है, continuous होता है with the endoplasmic reticulum से continuous होता है outer वाले. It is having the DNA, you all know, one or more nucleoli are there which is having the RNA and proteins. Okay, those nucleoli are not membrane bound. They are just the aggregates. They functions to form the granular subunits of ribosome. Then there are cytoskeleton filaments. These are the bones of the cell which are involved in providing the strength, support and locomotion to the cell and the intracellular transport also. There are three types of cytoskeleton filaments. These are very important points. ये से पूछा जाता है आपको. माइटोकॉन्ड्रिया कोई नहीं पूछेगा, राइबोसोम्स कोई नहीं पूछेगा, यही से जो पूछा जाए जो आपने कम पढ़ा हो. सो प्लीज इस पे आपको ज्यादा ध्यान देना. ठीक है. देयर आर थ्री टाइप्स ऑफ साइटोस्केलेटन फिलामेंट्स. दे आर इंटरमीडिएट फिलामेंट्स, देन देयर आर माइक्रोट्यूब्यूल्स, देयर आर माइक्रोफिलामेंट्स. ओके, इंटरमीडिएट फिलामेंट्स, these are the most abundant cytoskeleton of the cell, and these are both seen in cytoplasm as well as in nucleoplasm. Okay, primarily a structural protein which maintain the architecture. आपका जो सेल का आर्किटेक्चर है, न्यूक्लियर आर्किटेक्चर है, it is maintained by these intermediate filaments. You can see these are the intermediate filaments. है ना? There are different types of intermediate filaments in different areas. Like epithelial cell में जो intermediate filament होते हैं उसको केराटिन कहते हैं. मसल में होते हैं, है ना, mesenchymal origin, that is vimentin. Then मसल में डेस्मिन होता है ना. एस्ट्रोसाइट्स में GFAP, that is glial fibrillary acidic protein. These are the intermediate filaments. Then neuron, that is neurofilament. Then in nuclear lamina, that is lamine. Okay, so these are the different types of intermediate filaments in different areas. Then the microtubules made up of two globular proteins, alpha and beta tubulin, along with gamma subunit भी होते हैं. Concerned with three important functions in the cell. क्या function करेगा? Transport में help करेगा, ले जाएगा ये, है ना. Axonal transport, movement of cilia and flagella, then movement of chromosome during the cell. Like you can see, this is the anterograde. Yes, neurons है ना. Cell body से अगर नीचे की तरफ जा रहा है, that is axon hillock की तरफ. Then there is anterograde. इसमें कौन से आपको microtubules आते हैं? That is kinesin, है ना. These two microtubules, that is the kinesin for anterograde, सेल बॉडी से बनता है और उधर जाता है ना. देन रेट्रोग्रेड के लिए डाइनिन मेडिएटेड. ये दो आपको याद रखना है. देन cilia and flagella, you know, it is having, flagella is there in the human sperm, and cilia आपको रेस्पिरेटरी ऑर्गन में जहाँ पे आपको डस्ट वगैरह बाहर करना है, cilia होते हैं वहाँ पे. देयर कैरेक्टरिस्टिक, देयर आर एक्सोनिम. इसमें 9+2 अरेंजमेंट होता है. 9 outer double microtubule and 2 inner, है ना. 9+2 अरेंजमेंट करते हैं. They are connected by dynein arms. Cilia and flagella move because of these dynein arms. Okay. Then there are microfilament, actin and myosin, mainly concerned with muscle contraction and cell motility. Attendance हो गया? जी जल्दी करो. Some types of cell motility occurs solely as a result of actin polymerization. At times what happens that there is a bacteria called Listeria monocytogenes. It causes food poisoning sometimes. Okay, what it does, it gets into the cell, it polymerizes the actin. Actin and myosin दोनों है. At times कभी कभार सिर्फ actin का polymerization से क्या करते हैं, it rapidly अंदर चला जाता है ना, and it destroys the cell. So some type of cell motility occurs solely as a result of actin polymerization. Okay, thank you. That's all about the today's class. So there are a lot of things.